Die klatschen da. Ja, aber okay. Ging so. Okay. Habt ihr da hingeguckt?
I think that sequence holds the record for the longest spline in the history of computer games. I think we're close to 1 billion kilometers traveled during that whole sequence. So hats off to the engine team and supported by our cinematic artists that put it together. I also need to call out Pedro Camacho's music, which is always beautiful and sets the scene so well. And it's pretty stunning to think that hopefully from this video, and we're going to go into some of the new features later on in more detail, and you'll see actually better representations of some of the simulation that was happening there. But it's pretty amazing to think that all that happens inside the engine seamlessly without switching, loading screens, or anything else. It just
In einem
you can go from down
Multiplayer.
up close to a blade of grass all the way out, looking at a whole planet to moving to another star system. And that's actually one of the hardest things to do, especially when you do it at the scale we do online with that level of physical simulation, with hundreds of players, thousands of AI running around. It's hats off to our tech guys who are going to be coming up and talking about what they're doing. Now, obviously, some of the things in here aren't in the current live build of Star Citizen. Like, for instance, at the very beginning, I don't know if you noticed the conductor with the hair blowing and the tails blowing. That's all simulated in real time, and we'll talk about it on the physics part of the upcoming speech. But I'm going to turn the stage over to the core technology group to talk about some of all this new tech that you just saw and go into more detail. And we'll be rolling into Star Citizen over the next 12 months or so. And some of it, like some of the new cloud stuff, will actually come in 3.22, which is great. But before I do this, I wanted to introduce
3.22 confirmed.
Beauchesseau,
Doch
who,
kein 4-0 nach 3.21.
as a lot of you know, Turbulent have been our long-term partners here in Star Citizen since the end of 2012. And they built our web platform and our digital distribution platform, and a few years ago started to help us on developing the game. We have almost about 100 game developers in Montreal, because Montreal is a great place for game developing talent. And this year we brought Turbulent into the fold of CIG, and they're now fully part of CIG. So this July they joined us, and Benoit, who is the Chief Technical Officer of Turbulent, has now become the Chief Technical Officer of Cloud Imperium. And along with him and Marc Boudet, who is the CEO of Turbulent, is now our head of global studios. They're strengthening our management team at CIG, and I'm really, really happy to have them. And I want to introduce Benoit to come to the stage, since he leads up the tech group, and he can give you a little setup of what we're going to be doing this year and going forward, and some of the new initiatives we're going to go. So,
Ich glaube
Benoit?
einfach, ganz ehrlich, ich habe ja eben schon gesagt, da sind so viele alte Leute, vielleicht hat der ein oder andere auch gerade einen Herzinfarkt bekommen, weil ich fühle mich auch so ein bisschen, als hätte ich einen. Also,
All right, let's do it.
Here's the clicker, or did you take your own?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right.
Bonjour. Bonjour, CitizenCon. We are so happy to be here. It's been so long to see you guys physically, and just being able to interact has been fantastic so far. We're super excited about all this. The video you just watched outlined a lot of features in the Star Engine. It's a reminder of what makes this game so special. It's a focus on fidelity. I said it. It's a focus on immersion. And it's a focus on seamlessness, being able to go everywhere.
Pack Immersion habe
and
ich in meinem Bingo
you're
vergessen.
just there. The accomplishments from the tech teams at CIG have been numerous in building all the technology that allow you to run the game and allow you to experience the same things that we see in our dev setups. And so what we're about to see today is a deep dive into all these features. But first, I wanted to touch really quickly on this last year. We have launched persistence, or added persistence. It's been a rocky road this year, and I want to thank you guys for keeping on playing, giving us a hand, giving us good bug reports. It's been fantastic for us to improve the stability of the game, so thank you so much. You guys deserve a hand of applause. Thank you so much. I just want to touch on one bit, which is that all the people you will see in the next couple tech panels are really the best of their crafts in the world. They are infused by a value that we tremendously value at CIG, which is
Ich glaube, sie haben sie zum zweiten Mal gewechselt, Mabu.
that this game can be made,
Great guy,
that
yeah.
this vision can be achieved. And so, without further ado, but first, I got one more thing to say. So, in all of the different panels that you'll see, all the updates, everything that you'll see on screen, whether it's a HUD, an MFD, a ship UI, FPS weapons, everything, all of this is new. So as you watch the clips, you're going to see some differences. That's because this all comes from the freshest implementation that we have. We love open development. We love to show you guys the work in progress. And so that's exactly what we're going to look at today. And so without further ado, I'll leave you with Marco, who will show you all the cool and amazing features of our engine and the challenges that we face. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Benoit. Hello, I am Marco Corbetta, VP of Technology, and we're going to talk about StarEngine today. We have been developing StarEngine for many years with the goal of creating an online living universe. But creating a universe is not an easy task, and even more difficult to do everything seamless without any loading screens or invisible walls. And massive spaceships flying very fast, close to the terrain and objects, are pushing the limits of procedural generation and streaming. This is not a single-player game, so creating this universe online is making everything more challenging.
Frag mal
We
Bethesda.
stream and generate physics on server, on CPU.
Hier ist schon wieder so
And
eine
we
Fliege.
already support more than 100 players on a single server, more with server meshing. To support all this, the engine must do a lot of work every frame. So in a typical StarEngine frame update, we got up to 64 hardware threads, about 200 software ones, over 700,000 streamed in entities, and millions of entities overall in the solar system. About 150,000 updates per frame. We have over 200 vehicles, spaceships, and ground ones, over 2 million physical objects, over 100,000 objects generated per frame when flying over the terrain. We have many unique locations, streaming on demand in a seamless, gigantic space. Also, we are supporting many new features.
Ja, Mabu,
that
die
we
benennen
are
doch
going
alles
to
10-mal um.
showcase
Munching heißt jetzt
today.
auch nicht mehr Munching, sondern
I'm going to start by
Structuring,
introducing the
Salvaging
new
oder so.
and improved clouds
Also,
and fog, worked on by Custom Wenzel in the R&D team. The first new feature is the light shafts. They are volumetric shadows from clouds cast into the atmosphere. They are truly volumetric and 3D, fully integrated. They are not just a post effect as it is usually done in games. With this, the atmosphere from an overcast sky gets darker, and this is important for planets and locations with bad weather. Another component is the new ground fog. It follows the terrain up to a specified elevation for different locations. It is also fully integrated into the atmosphere. It receives volumetric shadows from clouds and terrain. It reduces the light scatter into the view ray. And in this video, we are showing all the features combined together. In addition, we made many improvements to cloud shaping to allow for more variation and details.
boah, sehen die Wolken gut
The
aus.
shape noise blending, a vertical variation, has been improved a lot.
Okay.
Also, we made improvements to shorten long distance read, and the
Klar.
tiling is less visible. And best of all, we're going to include all these new features and improvements in the next 3.22 release. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Hat er gerade wirklich gesagt, ja? Musste kurz mal den Test hier durchführen, sorry. Weil die Werbung nicht angezeigt wurde, aber die ganze Zeit in Textform kommt, deswegen.
Hi everyone. So I'm Mike Snowden. I'm the director of visual effects.
And I'm Ali Brown, I'm the Director of Graphics and Procedural Tech.
Hi!
Thank you very much. Really happy to be here. Really excited to show you. We're going to be showing dynamic fire in Starengine.
Ja klar, einfach mal so. Ach komm, machen wir jetzt. Wir zeigen jetzt, wie es Feuer kommen wir mal. Komm.
So dynamic fire is a driver for gameplay in both FPS and multi-crew experiences.
Können wir das aussehen?
It
Hallo?
creates emergent sandbox
Danke.
gameplay, and it can be used by designers to craft very dangerous scenarios for players. And as you can see from the video, it gets very intense. Okay, so how do fires start in Starengine? Well, there needs to be a source of ignition, and there are multiple ways in which it can occur. For example, weapon impacts or misfires,
Oder wenn ich an Bord gehe.
explosions or damaged items, and the player needs to be alert to their surroundings with fire an ever-present threat. If a fire does break out, you're going to see it dynamically propagate through the area, causing damage to environment and player. And at this point, the player needs to limit the damage, of course, by extinguishing the fire in any way that they can. So when doing so, they're going to need to wear protective clothing to protect them from extreme heat. They're going to need to wear a closed helmet to protect them from smoke inhalation, poor oxygen levels.
Alle Leute, die bei mir
And
an
there's
Bord
actually
gehen,
multiple ways the
immer eine
fire
volle
can be
Blase.
extinguished, including the removal of heat, for example, using the fire extinguisher, which is my personal favorite. It's a lot of fun doing that. The removal of oxygen, for example, locking off the area, venting
Mabu,
the
das hast du gerade
oxygen,
gefragt?
creating a vacuum.
Also quasi.
Or simply, the fire's burned so fiercely that it's done everything it needed to do. There's nothing left for it to destroy. And if you let it get this bad, it's probably time to consider repairing your ship.
Okay, so how do we achieve this from the technical perspective? Well, the first thing the artists and designers do is they mark up their scene to tell us what physical properties that each surface is made from, whether it's wood or metal. But not only on the surface, we have to describe what is behind the surface. You might see a metal panel on your spaceship, but has it got cladding or wiring behind it? It's important we know all this so we know how flammable it is. Then after this, we have to define all the physical properties that go with these surfaces. So, for example, what the mass is, the energy density, combustion temperature, fuel ratio. And we use all these physical properties and we sum them up in each voxel, which is a 1 by 1 meter cube. And then once we have these voxels, this forms the basis of our simulation. So then first thing we do is we look for sources of ignition and then we're off. So here's our debug mode that shows us what's going on in the simulation and is what we use to track it. And you can see these squares enlarging to show us where the fire is spreading. For each of these voxels, we're tracking the fire, the temperature, fuel remaining, the amount of smoke. And the fire is propagating via convection and radiation, which are both accurately simulated. And it's consuming the gases and producing the knock-on products as well as it goes. And because we're using a proper simulation, like Mike mentioned, when you vent a room, not only are you removing the oxygen and putting the fire out, but if the temperature remains the same, if oxygen is reintroduced, the fire will reignite and it will continue burning, just like it would in real life.
Sehr geil. Ja, kann man mal klatschen.
So what's next for this? So our focus has been on interiors, in particular spaceships, but all interior spaces really, and this voxel grid really helps us solve that problem. Our next focus is going to be on planets. Obviously they represent a slightly different challenge.
Mabo, in dem Video haben wir eben gesehen, dass die Reclaimer nach außen hin Rauch rausgeblasen hatte.
And we also have to render it at scale. But the way we've done it, the core tech we've used.
Es war am Anfang erst so ein bisschen, dann sind sie ins Schiff, dann hat es angefangen da zu brennen und dann wurde es immer mehr und immer mehr und am Ende war richtig viel
how
Rauch
do we
draußen.
create realistic dynamic fire visuals in Starengine? Well, we start with the simulation, as just described by Ali, and this gives us the data we need to drive the visuals. Then we bring in the burn shader. So this can be applied to static environments, and we have a lightweight version of the shader for entities, which is kind of based on the dirt shader and wear. Then we've got the glow, which is an animated surface decal shader for static environments. This is where we start to bring in some nice motion. And then we bring in the GPU particles, which are spawning from voxels and in screen space. Obviously, these are doing a lot of the work visually. Then we bring in the lights. These are spawned for clusters of voxels as opposed to per voxel as an optimization, a cluster being a representation of voxels close to each other. And then we bring in the fog. So this is height-laid volumetric fog. The smoke fills the room and it goes up to the ceiling before filling the rest. And we're simulating that.
Ich glaube, ich will alle meine Schiffe erstmal abfackeln am Anfang, dass sie richtig schön
So to finish,
verbraucht
we're going
aussehen.
to take a look at all of that put together in the game. Thank you.
So geil, du siehst immer die Temperatur und alles. Richtig, richtig, richtig schön. Rette den Pico! Raus mit dir! Raus, 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 raus!
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Niemals einen Pico zurücklassen. Das ist die erste Regel im Fight Club.
Hello everyone, I'm Will Hain. I'm here to talk about water in Starengine. So, water is a huge part of both of our games, Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and we wanted to give it a major upgrade.
Squadron 42.
We were going to set 3 ideas that we wanted to impart on our water. We want it to look as good as possible, obviously. We want it to look realistic. We want it to be beautiful. We want it to be in motion constantly. It should always be moving and always be reacting to everything around it, whether that be players or objects or vehicles. And we wanted this to work on the whole scales of all of Star Citizen, all the way down from footprints in puddles to enormous ships crashing into the ocean. I'm going to talk about our updates to the water rendering first, and then we'll move on to that other stuff I discussed. So first of all, the water shaders, particularly the ocean and the river ones, were in dire need of a major upgrade. They were currently using a technique called deferred shading, which is really fast and fantastic for opaque objects, but does not translate well for transparent ones, which of course water is. So the first step that we made was to transition to forward shading. That allowed us to introduce more physically based techniques, such as proper lighting, reflection, and refraction. It allowed us to integrate the atmosphere properly into our water lighting setup. And it also meant that we could get more fun techniques, such as wave crest backlight scattering, as adding better foam rendering, which includes halftone blending, surface haze, and much more detailed bubbles on the individual bits of foam. I've got some examples of that here. In this particular screenshot, you can see the icebergs in the near frame. You can see we're refracting the iceberg underneath. It's correctly refracted. In the mid frame, you can see that the iceberg is reflected back onto the water. That is now accurate. We weren't doing that properly before. Here you can see our accurate water lighting from this really beautiful screenshot of the Gladius over the water. I love this one. So this is the objects under the water being correctly lit, which is new. And then we are applying the lighting changes from the specular highlights on the surface, and also considering the lighting from the suspended particles in the water, depending on how deep and dense the water is, which gives us this really beautiful effect. This screenshot just looks good, but what is going on is that it's demonstrating that the atmosphere and the water are sorting properly. This looks like everything is normal, but it's challenging to implement with forward-rendered water and proper ray march clouds like we have in-game. Props to Alan, who works on all of this. I did the next bit. And here we can see the wave crash light scattering. See how the sun is coming across the back of those waves? It's lighting up the suspended particles in them. It just looks gorgeous. Here we have the multi-layered foam, and from a distance we have both surface foam and subsurface foam rendering correctly, looking really, really nice. I've just got a video here before and after. First of all, this is our lakes on Stanton 4. Next we have water volumes on Horizon. There you go. And this last demo, this is a Clio on the Stanton system. This is what it currently looks like in game, and I think you'll agree, pretty dramatic difference. So the next bit that I want to talk to you, that me and the team at Planet Tech and Graphics have been working on, is of course water surface simulation. This has been an absolute pleasure to work on. So we had a few aims for this. We wanted it to be multi-input. We want physics to influence this. We want our MFX system to influence this. We want bullets. We want everything. We want high concurrency. You guys, it's a sandbox game. You're going to break it. You're going to stick 1,000 picos in our puddles. It's got to work. And it's got to be scalable. It's got to work from the tiny scales to the footprints in the puddles all the way up to, as I said, giant ships crashing into the ocean. So the technique that we chose for this is a form of surface wave propagation. It's GPU-based, it's highly realistic at a low cost, and it can be scaled for waves of different amplitudes. So we can have all of that built right in just by adjusting a few constants. I've got a demonstration here. We're going to have the player walking through the puddle. As you can see, as he steps, you get a bigger ripple, but even as he's stepping, the toe is being dragged through the water and moving the water accurately.
Wir sehen gar
This is not a cop-out. We're doing this in 3D. You see as I'm jumping. And then this next demo, we're going to fire some bullets. This is a bit loud, this one. Right, the one more thing that we have to look at. So it's all well and good, this working on a puddle,
Kam
but
erst 2 Jahre
Star Citizen
später
is
rein.
not made of puddles. It's made of oceanic planets. It's made of everything. We needed to make this multi-scale. So we wanted the water near and far, not just in a square around the camera. We wanted lots and lots at once. The solution we picked was a multi-region water sim. Now, this was really, really tricky to get right, but I really think we have now. Which basically means that we can dynamically allocate all of the simulation regions depending on what is colliding where and what resolution we need at what parts of the screen. We can optimize this very heavily to make sure that you get what you want to see.
Alte Rechner, 1 FPS in der Nähe von
Still need to
Wasser.
get that information onto the water, though, and that's a bit trickier. So what we devised is yet another set of regions. Now, the regions are slightly different. The simulation regions need to happen wherever something is contacting the water, and that needs to happen regardless as to whether you can see it, because if there's a collision going on there, I look away, and then I look back. If it stops going and has to restart, that looks bad. Whereas the water, we only need to know the total result when it's actually in view. So we have these new regions which cover all water in view. And the beauty of this is that we can use this for multi-input and multi-output systems. Anything can influence our water, whether it be the simulation, whether it be weather, whether it be VFX. And then anything can be affected by water now. So the water rendering reads from this, but then we can also spawn VFX particles from wave crests. We can add screen space effects. We can have a line across your visor. We don't have this yet, but it's accurate to the displaced water in front of you. We've got this technology now, so we can use it to influence any of our work going forward. And here's a really good video of some of it in action. I'll just let that play. This is the debug mode. Essentially, we're moving a sphere of basically infinite mass through the water. And as you see, if we pan out a bit, we make our sphere a bit bigger, we get a much different result from the sim. Spawning the foam properly. It looks really nice, really happy with this one. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to turn on the debug mode so you can see where the regions are. You see we've got these grey boxes. They light up green when there is a
Mabu,
hit
dann kauft
inside
aber
the
keiner
box.
Schiffe.
We've also got different
Und dann können
sizes
sie
going on.
sowas
If
hier
you look
nicht
at the shore
machen.
there, there's a big cluster of
Und
text.
wenn sie sowas hier
That
nicht
is
mehr
a whole
machen
bunch of
können,
other
kannst du dir auch
regions
gar
because
nichts mehr
stuff
angucken.
floating there, causing little ripples that we can't
Leute
actually see.
müssen Schiffe kaufen,
And as you
ansonsten
see,
können
they
sie niemandem
scale
bezahlen.
properly. We can add the results from multiple sizes of simulation together, and they influence and interact with one another accurately. You see those big waves crashing over the little sim there. It works pretty nicely. I've gone ahead of my subtitles, but I'll just let that video play out.
Das ist schon ziemlich gut.
So, what does that look like when we bring it all together? What's it going to look like in game? Now, you did see a little bit of this in the Starengine trailer, but actually, I think this video does a little bit more justice to it, so I'm just going to let that play out for you.
Das hatten wir doch eben schon gesehen, oder? Das ist schon echt schön. Das ist... Also...
Forward in a second. You're going to see the wake start to happen behind us there.
Das sind weit
And from the
bessere
cockpit
Wellen als Sea of
perspective,
Thieves. Es tut mir leid.
Water
Sea of Thieves
droplets
ist ein
on the
Spiel, was
glass,
auf dem Wasser
thrown
stattfindet.
up
Das ist
from the
einfach
water
nur
sim. This is
so
what I'm talking
gemacht.
about using multi-output.
Das ist einfach nur mal eben, wir brauchen bessere, krassere Wasserbewegungen. Und das ist besser als ein Spiel, was nur um Wasser geht. Die Typen sind alle so geistig anders drauf.
And that's us. Thank you so much, Sitcon. Handing back over to Ali.
Kannst du doch keinem erzählen. Das kannst du. Du kannst doch keinem erzählen, wie krank die sind.
Hello again. So, I'm here to talk to you today about a few other graphical things we've got coming in. I'm really proud of the work we've done on the fire and the water. They both look amazing features. But I'm going to talk to you about a few smaller features and a few longer-term R&D features we're coming in on the visual side. This first one, something we wanted for cinematics and telling a story, but also to tie into our active feature system, which is to get the face to tell a little bit more story on our characters.
Das hätte ich in den letzten Tagen so gebrauchen können.
Implemented recently, and it allows us to use a GPU particle simulation, which we project onto the face, and then we integrate it into the skin shader, so we can get realistic reflection and refraction of water on your
so
face.
geil gewesen in
And
meinem
we even
Video.
make the skin go a little bit redder to simulate the extra blood flow when you're tired or upset. So none of this is a pre-canned animation. It's completely dynamic. We have complete control over everything. We can keyframe every single tear if we want to. And we can even simulate blood, like here.
Nice.
So next thing I want to talk about is our scope shader. Design came to me telling me that they really wanted to up the game with our rifle scopes. They weren't quite good enough. They didn't really feel realistic for them. And they thought it was a real core part of the first-person shooter experience. So to give you an idea of what we used to do, we used to use these type of fake scope meshes, which you see here, which is where we type of slice the scope in half so you can see through it. And sometimes we put these big black planes around them to obscure your vision. And we put a bit of glass on the front of it, but there was nothing really to tell you that it was a lens. So we've worked on a new scope shader, which is now going to be on all of our scopes moving forwards. And I'll give you a quick show of what that looks like in game. So on the first scope here, we're going to see it's got an infinite projected red dot scope sight. We've got lens distortions. You can see this little refraction and bending of light on it. You can see it works when you don't have to be actually holding the rifle for it to work.
Was ist denn los? Was ist denn los?
We've got a correct emulation of eye relief on the scope. So we have the blur, distortions, chromatic aberration. And then we've also got support for digital displays like this one, which has light amplification and has support for EMPs. If you get an EMP, you're going to have the display is going to get distorted. So we're quite proud of this. We think it's going to give a much better, more realistic simulation of the scopes in the game. And I think I've kind of mentioned before, but it's not a fake effect. It applies to our scopes no matter where they are. You don't have to be using the scope. You could look down somebody else's scope and see the same thing. It's fully integrated into it, so it's really quite proud of that. Next feature I want to talk about, hopefully if any of you have a HDR monitor and you've been playing 320, hopefully you've given a go of the HDR feature. We're really proud of this. It looks really good. And we've got some great feedback from you guys as well. There's been some strong feedback about we want extra black level controls, so we're going to be adding that for you. So make sure you can tweak the image exactly how you want. And there's a great user guide on Spectrum as well if you want to know how to get the best out of it, because it's not always a straightforward tech to get the best out of. Just to give you an insight of how this works, we've got something called the Unified Tone Mapping Curve, and this is the process where we map the real-life colors of real-life intensities of light onto what your monitor can display. And rather than having an SDR mode and HDR mode, we have like a smooth system where we can blend between SDR and HDR depending on the peak brightness of your monitor. We also pay a lot of attention to make sure we preserve the colors and the hues to keep an accurate image for the artist, and especially for skin tones. We don't want them turning red or white or doing anything bizarre. Just one thing to mention, we've got some content adjustments that will be ongoing. We've got a lot of content in Star Citizen.
Deswegen habe ich einen
It takes a
Shader.
little bit of time to make sure we balance everything so it doesn't look too dim or look like a supernova. Next thing I want to mention, temporal upscaling. This has been something that's been asked for a long time, and we're proud to finally get it into your hands. We've got 3 different techniques we're going to be implementing. We've got CIGs, we've got our own temporal super resolution solution called TSR.
Klar haben sie eine eigene Lösung.
Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2, and we've got NVIDIA's DLSS 2 as well. They each have different characteristics and hardware requirements and trade-offs, so it's important to get you all 3 so you could have a choice of what you want to look. On the left here, I've just got a zoom in from one of our outposts. That's no anti-aliasing for people that really love to see jagged edges. The center one is our TSA, which is what you've got in the current release today. And on the right-hand side is TSR without doing upscaling. And this is going to be replacing the TSA solution. And this gives us better quality and more stable image and hopefully much less ghosting. We can use our TSR to do upscaling. Here's the example of how it looks at each resolution. And similar results from AMD's FSR. And some numbers here, which I'm sure you can pour over later, but basically we can get about 2 times GPU performance if you're interested in using the upscaling technique. Obviously, if you're CPU limited, you might not get quite.
Dann hätte ich 260 FPS.
We also intend to look at frame generation techniques like FSR free and DLSS free, but these are going to come a bit later. We're going to focus on GPU performance, getting that up first. Frame generation isn't really applicable unless you've got a really good performance first. Some other quick updates. We've got the screen space shadows as added to Alpha 320. It gives us some extra detail in our shadows across characters, and it's particularly on planets, it helps a lot. And we've also got a new texture and mesh streaming engine that helps us get as much possible detail as we can onto your VRAM on your GPU. And it does something we call load balancing. It will scale dynamically for your GPU to make sure we can get the absolute best possible results. We've also got some more streaming improvements coming in the next release. Just to give you a quick show of what the screen space shadows mean, here we've got a planet with no shadows. I think it's Microtech. The shadow maps, so you see these, the normal shadow maps that fill in half the scene, but then when we get the screen space shadows, you look in the top of the screen or in the flowers, they type of fill in the detail for the rest. They really help type of bed the scene in and stop these things looking at floating. Next up, I just want to talk about planets for a little bit. It's something I get asked about a lot.
Heute bis 1, morgen bis halb 3.
Quite a lot of R&D in progress. First thing, we've got 2 new.
Wir sind erst beim ersten Teil, nach dem zweiten gibt es erst eine Pause, sorry.
Terrain texturing. It's quite a technical detail, but what this means for you is we're hopefully going to get much less popping or no popping at all. And we're going to achieve this by moving all the calculations to the GPU. And we'll be reusing the same type of patch-based system that Will talked about in his water presentation. And it should give you major CPU savings as well. So we're quite looking forward to getting this in. Another benefit is that it's going to give us the ability to add more complicated logic on, so we can type of do more diverse and interesting terrain, like things like, you know, we don't have beaches at the moment. We'll be able to achieve that.
Wir sind immer noch bei Sharpening the Worst, das geht 1,5 Stunden. Oder 2,5 Stunden?
Next thing we want to look at, which is probably the thing we asked about the most, is our scattering system, which is what's responsible for putting all the trees and the rocks down in the world. We're going to, again, move this to 100% to the GPU, and that should let us have vastly longer draw.
Heute geht's bis 4 Uhr. Bei denen, ja, also bei uns glaube ich bis 1 oder 2. Und morgen geht's bis 5:30 Uhr.
The resource system and the awesome fire system you just saw a minute ago. Another point is it's going to be a hierarchical-based system, which what that means is we'll be able to use nearby vegetation or rocks to influence what other vegetation and rocks can grow or will show up. And this lets us produce much more complicated rule sets, so we can do things like have a tree that maybe underneath it doesn't have any grass, or maybe certain trees come together in clumps, and we'll get a much more natural distribution of vegetation. And final thing we want for planets is we want to be able to build them much easier, much faster, and we want to make sure they are truly unique. At the moment, our planets are unique. However, they are built from type of tile sets, like pre-built things that get mixed and matched together and blended in complicated ways so that you don't see the repetition. But it's not truly unique, not in the same way that the Grand Canyon might be, or the River Nile, or Mount Everest. And that's what we want. So to get that, we need to replicate the complicated natural processes on Earth, like geology, climate, erosion, and these things aren't trivial. So we've got 3 options.
Character advancement, life in the first person, taking flight, living on the edge, destination adventure und dann closing ceremony.
We can use machine learning to do some of this. So just to give you a quick idea of how that would work or how it could work, if you just start with some random input here, it's just like some noise. We run it through a temporary simulation, so we can type of get a more reasonable approximation of simulation at different altitudes and latitudes on Earth. And then what we do is we categorize all this into different biomes. So based on the temperature and moisture, you'd find out what is a desert, what is a forest. And this part is crucial. So this is the input for our machine learning algorithm. We could come up with this image any other way. You could hand paint it as an artist, or we could just randomize the noise to get a different set of images. And then what we do is we take the large data sets we already have from Earth, from Mars, and from the Moon, and we train it on exactly the same distribution, so biomes, so forests, grasslands, and things like this. And by training it on exactly the type of data we get in reality, we can take this and then push just that, and then we can get these lovely height maps out of it that tell us a really realistic distribution. You can see here, this is the height map, so the black areas are low. You can see all the little rivers and valleys, and this had 0 art input aside from this image, which is a very nice result. It's early days. This is based on something called a custom diffusion neural network. It's, like I said, it's pre-trained on Earth data, and it's been built up in patches so that it just doesn't become too expensive to build. And the little circular patches get added together, and to avoid any seams in the image. And just to help you visualize it, I've just put some colorization on it to show you where snow and beaches might be, and just wrapped it around a planet to give you a better sense so it doesn't look quite so abstract. Yeah, but this is very early days, this stuff, but we're hopeful this will be helping the future of how we build planets quickly and efficiently. Thank you.
Sehr, sehr geil. Die letzten Worte fand ich gut. Ne?
So,
Schnell bauen und so.
Today is our Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan. This has been ongoing for quite some time, taking a lot longer than we would have liked, but we're finally getting to the end of this long journey. For those who don't know, the reason this was being implemented is largely for performance. We're going to be getting at least 2 times better performance on our CPU submission for rendering, which is often the bottleneck for the game, so that will directly, hopefully, translate to performance improvements.
Immer wenn einer irgendwas mit 2-mal mehr oder so sagt, muss ich mal an Todd Howard denken.
And it also opens the door for some things like ray tracing and new mesh shaders. So we've got a video of a Vulkan running, it's live captured. So I can't remember which ship is this, but it's it's all working fine now. There's a couple of hitches in performance, so we can't quite release it yet, but we're looking into them, the last few performance issues and stability issues, and hopefully we'll be releasing it soon.
Die sind sehr viel in der Reclaimer drin, merkt ihr das?
So, like I said, one of the things we really were interested in by implementing Vulkan was to get support for new hardware features, and one of the big ones was ray tracing. So with that, I want to hand you over to Ben, who's going to talk about some of our lighting research.
Ray Tracing? Hat der gerade Ray Tracing gesagt?
Hi, I'm Ben Parry, and this is Global Illumination.
Hi, Ben.
So, as Ali just said, moving over to the Vulkan renderer, and now that that's fully online, we've got access to hardware ray tracing on the GPUs that have support for it. And the best thing to do with hardware ray tracing would be to create a new, updated global illumination system for us to use. Now I'm here to give you a fairly early preview of the work that we've done so far, but first off I'm just going to simplify some things and ask what is global illumination. Well, you can break the lighting in a game down to 3 components. First off, you've got direct lighting. That's not global illumination, but that's the sun, lights in the level, that kind of thing.
Macht Sinn.
Next up, you've got diffuse global illumination. Now that's like a whole hemisphere, like a soft lighting that affects that takes from the entire scene and lights up the pixel.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, you've got glossy GI and reflections. That's like your shiny surface glints, your mirror reflections, that kind of thing. And now all of those combine together to form one glorious penguin. Now,
3080 reicht ganz locker
now, for the rest of this presentation, we're
ganz
specifically
locker.
talking about this guy, the diffuse penguin. Glossy GI has actually been disabled in all the videos. Even the old system videos don't show the glossy GI here, just to aid the comparison. First off, we've got a video from Chris Campbell, who's going to make us look cool.
doch. Ja, doch. Doch, das ist schon schön. Das ist schon schön. Gleich sagt er, kommt mit 3,22. Wenn das auch noch mit 3,22 kommt. Ich meine, 3,22 wird dann Ende des Jahres wahrscheinlich kommen. 4,0 kommt dann... Also 4,0 kommt nicht, also Pyro und Server-Meshing kommt nicht im zweiten Quartal 2023. Da bin ich mir ganz sicher. Ganz sicher. Und jetzt auch ziemlich sicher, dass es nicht mehr Ende des Jahres kommt. Also ich gehe tatsächlich von dem, was ich als allererstes gesagt hatte. Mein erstes Ding, was ich gesagt hatte, war Quartal 2 2024. Ich glaube, da sehe ich Pyro jetzt eher.
So next up, the boring or the interesting bit. How are we doing it? How does the tech work? I'm just going to dig into that just a little bit. So we're closely based on AMD's recent paper, GI 1.0. We're probably going to build on top of that, but at the moment we're quite close to it. We ray trace against a simplified world so that we get like smoother lighting for the, since it's a diffuse scene, we want a sort of diffuse, smooth signal. This also means that we get more rays per millisecond, which is always good. And we do generate a lot of probes. So the new system is generating, well, for comparison, the old probe was about 1 probe per room. And the new system is about 25,000 probes that are all on screen at the same time.
Hört sich ein bisschen tatsächlich an wie Nvidias
So here's a scene that I've dramatized a little bit just to give trouble to the old lighting system.
Von Unreal Engine.
And this is what the ray tracing sees. So it's a simplified single color per object kind of thing. But then we've also got this kind of a 3D dictionary of average light values, so that the light is kind of shared over things in a similar area.
Wir sind keine 2 Stunden drin und ich glaube, wir können jetzt schon sagen, dass wir unserem Hype untertrieben haben. Noch ist es nicht in-game. Wir sind noch nicht in-game.
This is the old system, so you'd render a single image from the center of the room, blur it, and then slap it onto the entire scene. Now, as you can see, like, the middle of the scene is about the right lighting, but everything else has got the middle of the scene's lighting. Like, these red lights at the sides, they're basically drowned out by the table bounce that somehow made it across the room to them. So we want to replace that
Lupus, die letzten 2 Jahre konnte man Pyro auch schon schmecken. Ich sag's nur. Ich bin super hyped gerade und ich find's super geil, was alles auf uns zukommt in den nächsten 12 Monaten, hat Chris ja gesagt. Aber er hat auch jetzt schon 12 Mal gesagt, dass Pyro rauskommt. Also.
And then we add a screen space occlusion pass just to tidy up the edges on things. And there is the final composite.
Ah, sieht schon sehr, sehr geil aus. Also, ich glaube, da haben sie sich ein bisschen was von der Unreal Engine abgeguckt. Ich glaube, da haben sie sich ein bisschen was von der Unreal Engine abgeguckt.
What else does it do?
Was okay ist und was auch so sein
because it's real-time generation, it means we can do a real-time bounce, and we can do that with quite small areas.
Es ist von der Unreal Engine abgeguckt. Sehr geil.
And that means that the art team can really lean into like strong local variation on color.
Ja.
As again, we will see.
Ja. Das ist,
so we'll do a side-by-side comparison on this one. As you can already see, like the spotlight's really like throwing stuff into the scene. This is just one light in the room.
Ja. Das ist tatsächlich
we did have live updating,
was ich hier sehr wiedererkenne.
It was designed for like time of day changes rather than this
der Unreal Engine 4.2 ist, glaube ich,
and finally, it means that we can do things like
Lighting auch da reingekommen.
Can just illuminate the world without having to
und das sieht 1:1 gerade so aus wie das hier. Und ich finde es gut. Ich finde es gut, dass die haben das gesehen, haben gesagt, komm, nehmen wir mit rein. Finde ich eine sehr, sehr geile Sache.
So yeah, there's 2 really common cases in Star Citizen particularly that this is going to help with. First off, cockpit brightness. We capture at the moment the...
Hey, grauer Wolf, mein Mann.
At the moment we capture that cockpit probe in a setup scene, and then we don't update it as you're flying around. So you're not going to get the sky color in, and you're not going to get the ground color in. And then we've got the opposite problem that I don't have a picture for this, but cargo bays, sometimes they're light, you land somewhere dark, you open up the doors, and now you've just got this weird little light room with nothing spilling out of it. So again, let's have a video.
Wo wir gerade bei Lichtern...
Yeah, so this is the old system. The sun's working, but you can see there's no sky, there's no ground lighting. By the way, I've turned off a lot of the cockpit lights so that you can see this. And then in the new one, you can already see the skylight is kind of helping a little. But then as you turn over, you get all the ground lighting.
Ich baue auch immer Unreal Engine nach, ist ja nichts, wo man sich anstrengen muss. Ja, true.
See, one of the concerns we had was that we didn't want to create a two-tier system.
Also,
people have got hardware ray tracing,
sorry, dass ich hier immer so reingrätsche, aber ich kann halt nicht anhalten, ne? Man muss halt wirklich dazu sagen, und das habe ich schon ein paar Mal gesagt, immer in Star Citizen Lives und sowas sieht man das, wenn die so ein bisschen einfach zeigen, was sie können. Die einzelnen Devs, die haben, jeder einzelne für sich ist unendlich gut. Die müssen hinkriegen, dass die alle miteinander bündig funktionieren. Das muss CIG noch ein bisschen besser hinkriegen. Vor allem, dass die unterschiedlichen Teams miteinander besser funktionieren. Wenn die das hinkriegen, die Vision ist ja jetzt schon geschafft, sind wir mal ehrlich. Aber wenn sie das hinkriegen, dass die Teams noch besser miteinander vernetzt sind, dann ist das die sind halt komplett krank, die Jungs da. Als nächste Ankündigung VR-Support, ja.
And now this is what Star Citizen would have looked like if we released it on the PS1. The sharp-eyed among you may have noticed also the ship is missing, but you know, we can't do dynamic objects in this. You'll be surprised. It doesn't seem to mind.
Wär auch okay.
And there we have software GI in the middle, which is, yeah, like I say, it was using the same 25,000 probe system.
Wahnsinn.
But not having to use any kind of hardware ray tracing.
Die schreiben die Live-Geschichte mit ihrer Arbeit, ist so.
It's not identical, but it's a lot more dynamic than the old.
Für die Leute, die es noch nicht verstanden haben, ich bin gerade auf 2 Plattformen gleichzeitig live. Ausrufezeichen Multi, dass ihr auf beide Plattformen quasi gucken könnt. Ja? Zusätzlich nur auf Twitch gibt es ein Giveaway. Ja. Wenn ihr hier zuguckt, kriegt ihr Punkte, mit denen könnt ihr euch ein Ticket kaufen.
I don't have pictures because it's stuff we've not done. Glossy reflections. Obviously, we want to complete the picture, and for that, we need to handle glossy reflections. That's self-explanatory, really. I don't know what to say about that. Secondly, you've only seen it on opaque surfaces so far. The next step is to extend this so that it can support glass and water and all the other transparent things in the game.
Stellt euch vor, Spiegel funktionieren.
Beyond that, we've obviously got fog, we've got other atmospherics. We want to expand GI to make sure that it affects everything smoothly and equally. And the final thing is a Star Citizen thing. We've got giant scenes, we've got a ridiculous scale on some things, and we've got plans to make sure that this GI extends to handle that full scale. Anyway, that's all I've got to tell you now. I've been Ben Parry. Next up, we've got Star Club with Chris Rain.
Lupis, die Leute im YouTube-Chat sehen es aber alles eine Sekunde vor dir. Mhm.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. I am Chris Rain, and I would like to show you not 1, not 2, but 3 new physics of our physics engine. And I would like to start off by introducing Star Cloth, our new character cloth simulation with a short video. So this is just regular player movement. That was actually me playing. You can see the cloth collides with the ground.
Die haben denen Schuhe gegeben, die sind nicht mehr ganz nackig.
You can see multiple layers of cloth that do not interpenetrate.
Das ist schon mal gut.
Cloth gets influenced from wind and has accurate collisions with the player's body.
Das war jetzt beim Quantum Crisis Video, hat man das auch gesehen, als Steve im Bett lag, sind die Klamotten, ja, man hat seine Unterhose ein bisschen gesehen. Ja, aber
we now have support for collisions from dynamic objects.
Die haben echt komplett einen an der Möhre.
You can play football in any outfit.
Oh, der Ball ist weg.
Starcloth supports the full range of motion
Das
a
ist eine
human
neue
can
Frisur.
make, from fast movement
Das ist eine neue Frisur.
to extreme poses.
Das ist eine neue Frisur. Mega geil. Mega, mega, mega gut. Also
Starcloth is designed to be a first-class member of our physics engine. It interacts with everything we have to offer, from character movement over forces like wind, thruster backwash, explosion, to projectile impacts and collisions. It's efficient. It always updates at 120 FPS, regardless of the frame rate, and is hand optimized. It's immersive and believable. It's a realistic simulation based on physical properties. It's high fidelity, high quality. We want to raise the bar with this. The visual geometry you see on the right is complex and not suitable for simulation. The visual geometry is made with visual quality in mind, and that does not translate well to simulation. So we decided to add the ability to use bespoke meshes that are made to simulate well and let their movement then deform the visual geometry. This allows us to share the same
die haben einfach
across
fucking Lack
multiple visual
gesoffen.
meshes, which is a huge productivity boost for tech art. We can seamlessly blend the simulation on and off, so we can disable the simulation at a distance. Back to the football. Everything that is dynamically simulated is able to interact with the cloth, from ships, over crates, boxes, and even footballs. We ensured that the collisions are accurate and believable. As you can see in the image, the football parts both layers of the gown. The cloth itself supports self-collisions, which means it will create folds and wrinkles, but not interpenetrate itself or other layers of cloth. The same applies to the static environment as well. The cloth will drape itself around the environment, so brushing up against objects will result in the behavior you expect. We added tapered capsules to improve collision detection accuracy. A tapered capsule is
Der Mabu ist ja
capsule
live.
that has two different radii at
Die
the
lesen ja jeden
endpoints.
Chat mit.
Human anatomy is complex, and we need to accurately represent it for collisions. The traditional capsules we use on our ragdolls lead to jumps in the collision surface. Now, notice how there is a jump between the elbow and the lower arm, and another jump where the forearm connects to the hands. These jumps pose significant problems for our cloth simulation. If you look at the upper torso, you can see the
Das ist,
collision
ist
properties are actually
Second Life. Das
completely
ist
hiding the cloth,
definitiv Second
and they're
Life.
essentially
Also
completely useless.
du kannst,
So now notice the difference on the same body represented
wenn man
with
in diesem
tapered
Spiel
capsules.
essen könnte und dann
We can
selbst
now
satt werden
faithfully
könnte,
represent
dann würden sehr
the
viele
hips,
Menschen auf dem
legs,
gesamten
and
Planeten nur noch
arms of the
dieses Spiel
character.
spielen.
An
Ja,
additional benefit
nichts
of tapered
anderes mehr machen.
capsules is that the collision detection is significantly faster than with regular capsules. Currently, we're only using them for cloth collision detection, but in the end, we'd like to use them for everything.
krass.
We simulate the cloth always at 120 FPS or 120 Hertz, regardless at which update rate the game is running at.
Wie
We
geht
do
das?
this to be faithfully able to detect
geht
collisions
das?
with a fast-moving character. As we're simulating at a higher rate,
Gibt's hier
than
die
the game
Klamotten in
updates,
eigenen
we
Server
have to
oder was?
interpolate the joint positions between updates we get from the game. At each simulation step, we perform collision detection, simulation, and update the cloth sim cage. Now, if the game is running at 120 FPS, we do one update for the cloth simulation. If the game updates at 60 FPS, like in the image, we simulate the cloth twice. Now, if the game runs slower, like at 30 FPS, we need to update the cloth 4 times. You can see this in the image. It becomes apparent that we need to make the cloth run as fast as possible. And we spent a great deal of
Obstkuchen, dafür gibt es morgen ein eigenes Ding. Character Customization kommt morgen.
And using every trick in the optimization handbook. The effort pays off because we can faithfully capture very complex movement and fast-moving characters, even at low frame rates, without any clipping or tunneling. Thank you. One area that poses a significant challenge for character cloth is when multiple pieces of garments layer on top of each other, like a tight-fitting jacket.
Das kann er doch nicht sagen, während die so eine Nahaufnahme vom Schritt haben.
This is a very difficult region to simulate properly because you don't have much space and the simulation collisions have to be absolutely accurate. This, what I'm going to show you, is a very subtle effect, but once you notice it, you cannot stop noticing it.
Bitte nicht.
I want to focus your attention to the waist region of the character. Here we tweak the simulation settings in real time to see the effect. Here you see a rendering with a high fidelity cloth disabled. And here the same scene with it enabled. To be continued.
Das ist ein komplett neues Schiff da gerade gewesen.
Much more can be seen about Starcloth in the character advancement panel. Be sure not to miss out.
War das gerade die Idris von ihm?
So, next up, Star Hair.
Ja.
Currently, we have the ability to simulate the effect of moving hair with joints that are essentially simulated pendulums. The hair is skinned to these joints, and when these joints move due to the pendulum simulation, the hair moves with it. This leads to a fast and believable movement of hair. However, the quality is directly correlated to the quality of the skinning, which is tedious for tech art to achieve for some complex hairstyles. Further, apart from gravity, the pendulum joints do not react to external forces like collisions or wind or explosions. So we asked ourselves, can we somehow improve upon this? And I'd like to show you some early prototype
ja, aber deswegen bauen sie ja die Vulkan Engine und so weiter immer mehr und immer mehr aus. Damit die Last halt ausgeglichen auf CPU und GPU ist und nicht mehr nur auf dem CPU, so wie es halt derzeit ist. Also mit derzeitigen Standards würdest du definitiv mit 3 FPS herumlaufen, wenn Wasser und der ganze Quatsch alles irgendwie dazukommt. Aber in den letzten Patches, auch mit meinem alten PC, habe ich würde sagen, ich bin so von 25 Standard-FPS auf 45 Standard-FPS gekommen. Also sie entwickeln da ja auch immer weiter, dass du mehr FPS hast.
Also the sheer number of strands and their individual triangles and vertices are simply too much to simulate efficiently, even for our highly optimized cloth engines.
Physikalisiertes Haar haben sie auch aus Unreal.
We realized then that our artists are actually using splines to create these strands. And a spline is a smooth curve or line through space. You could see that in yellow. And we thought maybe we can just simulate these. They're much simpler. So, and hair simulations need to be able to maintain the original hairstyle. You cannot have the hair simulation change the visual appearance of a character. One of the reasons why using the cloth simulation for hair did not work out at all is that the cloth only simulates vertices and they have no concept of orientation. So you do not know how the next segment has bent in relation to your current segment. In other words, you cannot easily simulate twist with vertices alone. For splines, however, that is very easy to do. So all of this together allows us to simulate the strands according to the theory of Kosarat rods. A Kosarat rod allows you to model the behavior of slender one-dimensional rods, exactly what our splines are, and simulate bend, twist, stretch, and shear, exactly what we need. Hair also needs exact collision detection to not intersect with the head, the ears, the cheeks, the jaw region. The video I'm about to show you is some very early prototype footage of how such a simulation actually looks like. So this is a test of various head movements to see how the hair reacts. Hair simulation is one of the hardest things to simulate, especially in a real-time context, and very tricky to get right. We're actually simulating all the hair strands. So we will have characters being able to run their hands through their hair and have the hair react realistically. A barber simulation next. Actually, being a bald man, this was a very touching moment for me when I made this video. Thank you. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Maelstrom, our physically based destruction system. And I would like to do that with a video that I believe speaks for itself. See the water splashes?
Ich kann es nochmal sagen, die haben doch Lack gesoffen.
We want players' intuitive prediction of the effect a weapon or a collision has to actually happen in the engine or in the game. So we decided to move away from hit point pools or other abstract models to simulate damage, but rather have damage be calculated from a physical model and from the physical material properties of each entity. If something breaks off due to its structural integrity decreasing below a certain threshold,
es tut mir leid, dass ich da so ein bisschen, ihr könnt ja an der Seite lesen, aber stellt euch vor, ihr baut irgendwo eine Basis auf. Die wird angegriffen, die wird auseinandergerissen und so weiter und so fort. Und irgendjemand kommt ein halbes Jahr später an diese Stelle, wo eine Basis ist, die halt komplett zu Klump geschossen wurde. Wie geil, ey, diese Geschichten, die dieses Spiel erzählt, Geht nicht von dem, das ist cool, Sachen kaputt machen und so, geht wirklich nur von diesen Geschichten aus, die sich da erzählen, über die Jahre, wie das Spiel dann quasi online sein wird. Ich brauche mehr Schauspieler, Ausrufezeichen Discord. Ich brauche mehr Schauspieler. Ich möchte die geilsten Maschinen niemals machen, die überhaupt je da waren. Und, hey Leute, wir brauchen mehr. Wir brauchen Statisten, Schauspieler, etc. Wir brauchen das. Ich möchte viel, viel geilere Sachen noch machen. Und mit sowas allem geht das halt.
To achieve all this, we gave each physical geometry instance an identifier to be able to uniquely identify it within the universe. So your Gladius wing is your Gladius wing.
Man kann das schon, also man kann schon alles in ein Spiel
physical
machen.
material and damage properties that can now be replicated across the network. One of them, and that's the most important one, we call integrity. And this determines how much structural or internal integrity.
Zu wenig Zeit. Manchmal brauchen wir auch einfach nur jemanden, der was spricht. Das dauert 20 Minuten. Also
absorbing
wirklich.
energy from kinetic impacts or energy weapons. And also in the future from absorbing energy from external factors like extreme temperature or fire, as you've seen before. We also track which physical part or geometry belongs to which visual geometry and which high-level entity. So if the structural or internal integrity collapses, we know which visual geometry is affected and which item might be affected as well.
Tobi, es ist nichts Wildes passiert. Es ist überhaupt nichts Wildes passiert. Alles gut. Alles super langweilig.
Cease to fire and so on. To make things break apart, we create what we call breakable clusters. A breakable cluster is a set of physical geometry, the visual geometry, and the entities on top that can break off. Between breakable clusters, we create abstract cantilever beams to be able to model stress and strain. I'll go into more detail in that in a bit.
Aber das ist Munching.
Breakable clusters are
hierarchical.
They mirror the hierarchy of all attached entities involved. They also embed the hierarchy of all animated joints. And they also embed the hierarchy of all physical geometries. They essentially represent a ground truth of the entire hierarchy necessary to perform all our goals for Maelstrom. This image is showing a breakable cluster graph of the Gladius.
Ja, klar.
I'd like to show one more video of Maelstrom before we continue.
Ja, klar. Lack gesoffen!
We needed to find a good way to easily and efficiently determine when a breakable cluster breaks. We chose a well-established model from material sciences and structural engineering, cantilever beams. In essence, a cantilever is a structural member that has a fixed support and a free end. Forces experienced on the free end can be used to calculate the amount of stress the fixed support is enduring. The basic ideas behind that are best explained from a very simple example. If a ship were to collide with the horizontal part of the crane in the image, far from the vertical part, the fixed support would endure a higher stress as if the ship were to collide closer to the vertical part. But not only does the point of impact determine how much stress the cantilever beam experiences, also how large the surface area is connecting the cantilever and the fixed support has a large influence on when a cantilever beam will break. In our case, this actually means we analyze the cross-section of the intersection of the set of geometry from two breakable clusters to calculate the surface area. A wing attached to the body has a rather large connecting surface area compared to the surface area calculated for the stabilizers connected to the body. We then project forces from impacts and explosions onto these cantilever beams and calculate the stress the beams experience.
Ihr habt es ja eben schon mal geschrieben mit Jumptown. Ich sehe Jumptown demnächst nicht mehr da stehen. Also da geht einfach eine A2 drüber oder Ghost Hollow und Co. Da fliegt eine A2 drüber oder ein paar A1 und dann ist das alles kaputt.
We want Maelstrom to be a systemic system that we can use on all types of entities. So here's some video of some test footage of AI shooting each other behind breakable cover and Maelstrom barrels. Physical material properties influence damage and breaking and have a direct influence to how things break and fracture.
Die geben uns auch gar keine Pause gerade, oder?
We added various properties. Density.
Und das ist nicht mal der Bereich, wo Jared gesagt hat, ihr müsst auf euren Stühlen sitzen. Da sind wir noch nicht. Glaube ich.
Young's modulus.
Bin mir nicht sicher.
And this is more or less what I wanted to talk about Maelstrom, but I don't want to leave without showing one more video of what carnage Maelstrom can create.
Wir sind immer noch bei Sharping the Worst. Irgendwie geht das alles ein bisschen länger. Hauptsache der Pico steht. Wie eine 1.
So. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Benoit.
Also danach kommt Fix It, oder was kommt danach? Danach kommt Fix It and Fly It.
Great, thank you.
Crucible?
All right. I am not this person, but I'm filling in with him. So far, I mean, you guys think this is gonna change your game up to now? All these new features? Hell yeah. Okay. So we've seen updates from fire, water, we've just seen force, we've seen sun and light. So the next thing that's left to build a ludicrous space game is audio. And so I'll leave you with Graham, who's gonna show you some of the new audio enhancements we bring to StarEngine to make it even more realistic than it is now.
Hi CitizenCon, Graham here. Good to see you. Recently in the audio team, we've been looking at how we can create a greater psychological connection and emotional impact within our games through the use of improved audio technology. Audio can play a crucial role in the immersion of the player, and with that in mind, the audio code and technical sound design teams have been looking at all of our tech from the ground up. For example, when you're under threat, you should feel a real sense of danger. When you're armed, you should feel the dangerous power that you hold within your hands. Earlier this year, we showed you our resonance tech, which allows us to bring the action much closer to the player even when they're deep in the bowels of a ship and far away from where all the hits and the explosions are happening. But that's just one part of a much larger push to create a better, more immersive audio experience. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the tech we've been working on. First, let's listen to some of our weapon sounds in action.
Kennt man?
They're a great simulation, but we wanted to take them further and express the sound pressure, the forces being exerted. Our new in-house audio effects, particularly the multiband compressor, tuned by our sound designers, give us this result.
Ja, klar.
The compression serves to illustrate the power of the weapons and the effect that they have when going beyond the limits of the listener.
Klar, klar.
Let's show you the same audio effects applied to the ship weapons, taking us from this to this.
Jeder, der keine IEMs drin hat, ist ja so gefickt. Alter, das massiert gerade mein
But it's not just
Trommelfell.
about feeling powerful. Changes in audio can create a sense of danger, of being out on your own and under threat. Here's an example of ship combat.
Oh, guck mal auf das HUD, wie geil das aussieht.
Sounds good, but what if we wanted a little more realism?
Geil.
The audio propagation tech that we've been rolling out makes it easier to change the soundscape in real time, and a nice use of that technology is to provide a more realistic option.
Ey, wenn so ein Schuss auf dich
Here,
einschlägt,
your
wie
own
geil das
weapons
einfach
resonate
ist.
through the hull of the ship. Only what's in the pressurized cockpit is heard clearly, and the threat level feels higher due to the isolating lack of enemy weapon and ship audio. Making these changes creates space in the audio, both spectrally and temporally,
Das hat es
making
mega gut,
impacts seem bigger, more damaging, more of a problem for the player. This realistic mode isn't limited to the flight experience, it's applied appropriately to the game as a whole. Here's an FPS battle in a depressurized area.
Der cheatet. Hat God-Mode an.
With realistic mode, we get that sense of isolation again, giving the location a different colour and adding variety to the audio experience. Player breathing and foley are exaggerated, and other sounds are transmitted through physical contact.
Auch das HUD hier sieht so viel besser aus.
That's all from us for now. We look forward to getting these new audio features into your hands.
All right. Hello, everyone. So, persistent entity streaming, replication layer, and beyond. My name is Paul Reindel. I'm Director for Online Technology. And I'm going to show you a little bit insight in our technology for persistent entity streaming and the replication
Publikum
layer.
bei sowas finde ich immer komplett. Also,
I thought about
die
what's
sitzen
the
da
best
rum und.
way to show you
keine Ahnung.
something about that tech. And I thought about putting some technical drawings on the slides, or maybe show video like we did 2 years ago. But really, the best way to show you how persistent entity streaming works is to give you a live demonstration.
Persistenz.
And that's what I'm going to do. All right.
Live Preview, Lupus! Live Preview! 30K! Let's go!
So this will all be live, so please bear with me if there's any glitches. So let's keep this rolling. I think I'm supposed to press the button. No, it's already switched. Before we start, a little bit I just give you a little bit an overview what you see here. Let me set up everything.
Ich bin gerade völlig verwirrt, was hier alles gerade passiert. Ich bin völlig verwirrt.
One moment, sorry. So on this left side, you will see my client window. And on the bottom side, you will see the server renderer. So for this demonstration, and I start a second client, I'm just...
Error! Woo! Der ist der Error! 10.080 oder so.
This is live, all right. So again, on this side, you see the client. And he just logged out because I started a second client. So let's do this again. One more time.
Okay, das scheint
on
wirklich...
this side, you see the server renderer,
also normalerweise, wenn die sagen, dass es live ist, ist es nie live, aber das scheint wirklich live zu sein.
Small demonstration level. And on this side, you see the entity graph, which is our online database. That's powering what you see in persistent entity streaming, what you play since 3.18.
Guck mal, 4 Strings ist ja easy.
And I also have
das
some
Game kann ja
metrics
jeder
on the
bauen.
screen, which shows the entity graph worker, the requests per minute, per second, the mutations, and you also will see entities created and destroyed once I do that. All right.
Ich habe noch nicht verstanden, was will er uns jetzt zeigen? Ich habe nicht zugehört, glaube ich.
To come up and, join this level.
Warum hat er keinen Arena Commander?
So the first thing that will happen when I join this level, you will see on that server everything streams in, and my client get connected and also streams in everything on the client view. What would happen on the behind the scenes is that my player just got unstowed into that chart, and we at real time created everything for this player. So you will see his body is attached to the player. You will see his mobi-glass, his head with all his customizations, his undersuit, and then all his customizations as well on the undersuit. What you also see is that this player just got unstowed and attached to a static zone object container. And this is how our zone system works. Basically, on the server, you will see 3 different zones, purple, green, and red. And each zone comes with its own coordinate system and its own physical grid. And this is how we actually, on live, do zone transitions between your ship, empty space, space station, or a planet. And you will see, as I walk between those zones, I will at real time update it in that entity graph.
Das ist dynamisches fucking Server-Meshing.
So for a client, this is completely transparent. You don't notice that. But this is actually what's happening when you step in or out into a ship.
Das ist doch nicht mehr
and
statisch.
This is very unique to our engine. No other engine has this zone system, and that allows us to do all the amazing stuff you saw in the videos before, transitioning in and out of planets and go from the smallest scope to the largest scope.
Das ist nur auf einem Server die... Okay. Das ist ein Step davor quasi.
We do in a shard, so this is like a mini level, like the mini PU level, is also persisted in this database. When we create new entities in our engine, in Star Engine, those entities get pushed into our entity graph, into our online database at real time,
der Entity Graph gibt dann quasi zum Server die Daten weiter.
If I go ahead and spawn a couple of plushies here, you will see they spawn, they get created immediately on my entity graph and replicated on the server and on the client. So spawn a couple more here. And you see this, the Pengus I spawn in the other zone get attached to the other zone. And then if I go and transition one of those, they will also transition between the different zones. And the same works for ships or more complex entities. If I spawn this buggy here, you will see this one gets created with all its attachments and everything else attached to it. And this is just my small demo level here. On live, we have up to 600,000 dynamic entities that get created for one single chart. And this is just the initial state. After 2 weeks, 3 weeks of gameplay, when you guys go in and destroy stuff, spawn stuff, play around, it goes in the millions of entities. So this in itself is pretty amazing tech. The next time I want to talk about is our streaming system. Most engines do stream on texture or geometry. We actually stream entities, and we do stream persistent entities. So when I turn on the streaming system here and I walk into this, if I walk over to the red area, you will see that the purple area will stream out together with all the entities on that server. So it does not only stream out on my client, it actually streams out on that server. And when I come back in the green zone, that purple zone streams back in with all the entities in there with their full persistent state. So now I have a second player joined. Benoit is going to join me. So Ben, if you want to join, okay, I think you see him over there. Hey, Ben. Sorry. Nice. All right, I'm going to spawn a couple more penguins here. Because the next thing I want to talk about is new technology we are right now developing, and we are about to put on the tech preview for you to play. And this is actually the replication layer split. And that's the big next step in our great vision, obviously, as you might know. So in this demo, my client and my servers, they are no longer directly connected. Actually, I have a new service running here, and that is our replication service. So my client is connected to this replication service, and my server is connected to this replication service. And
Können wir
the
zusammen machen, wenn du
replication
Bock hast.
service,
Können wir am
its
Montag
own
zusammen machen, wenn du
the
Bock
sole
hast.
purpose is to get all the entities which are in the entity graph and stream them to clients and servers which are connected to. And what's really cool about this is, let's do a little experiment here. I mean, you all know our game has bugs. It's still alpha, and sometimes things can happen. So let's see what's happening when I kill my server here. So this is my server, the actual console.
Wir kriegen einen
Let's just shut
30k.
it down.
Da ist er. Wir kriegen 30k.
And yes, this is where you would usually see a 30k or something. You can see Benoit kind of froze there for a bit, and the buggy does a bit weird stuff. I can shoot those pingus, but the world is really in a frozen state right now. But I didn't disconnect, because I'm connected to the replication layer and not to the server anymore. In the meantime, I'm just starting a new server. Let's be a bit patient for it. It should come back online in a second. And as you can see, now that the server came back, it restored the state. It restored the state, and the simulation just continues to work as before. So this will be, again, this is a very early tech, but this is a great benefit of what we have with our replication layer split.
Das
But
ist
there's
Wahnsinn.
one more thing.
Was?
And let's try this thing again. I just killed my server, and I'm trying to do that again. But this time, we're doing something different. So let's first go in here. This is my development tool. I can talk about it in a second. So let's stop that server again. And restart.
Persistenz.
And this will take a little bit. I'm running this tool you see here. This is our internal development tool. This tool runs the entire stack of our game on this PC. This is obviously for development only, and I can do that with my small test level. But this really helps online devs and all people who work on the incredible, complicated tech we hear to be able to develop our game. And because I run everything on this PC, it's a bit slow. So let's wait and see what's happening here.
Was will uns jetzt zeigen?
All right. Simulation continues. I can see Ben moving again. Hey, Ben. However, what just happened? Well, as you can see on my screen, I no longer have one server connected. I have 3 servers connected to this replication layer. So what you guys see here, this is the very first version of a working server mesh.
Server meshing, Server meshing, Server meshing. 42.
All right. So now I'm going to explain a little bit how this magic works, because it is truly magic. Each server, when it came up and the replication layer realized there are 3 servers, we assigned different zones to those servers. And we said, OK, server 1, you are the authority over the purple area. Server 2, you are the authority over the green area. And the last server is authoritative over the red area. You can still see that those servers have all those entities replicated, but only the entities within their zone are actually authoritative on that server. So while I'm in this green zone at the moment, my entity is simulated on that green server and just replicated on the other server. And now, as I transition between those zones, you will see that on that green server, I just lost authority, and on that purple server, I just gained authority. And because my player was replicated on both servers, this completely works seamless. And again, let's do that a couple of times. You see on my client here, I don't notice anything of that. This all happens behind the scene. And this doesn't work only on me. Let's turn on the zone colors and the object, the authority assignment on the client as well. You can see that even entities, as they transition into the other zone, seamlessly transition to that zone.
Sie haben es tatsächlich hingekriegt.
And not only that, I can also interact with entities that are on the other side. So if I go on the green zone, for example, and I shoot this, I can still shoot that purple entity.
Sie haben es
And I can also just go ahead and destroy that buggy which sits on that other zone. There you go. Always fun to blow stuff up, right? All right. So there's more to this. The first thing I will do, let's spawn a fresh buggy. I just destroyed mode 1. When I go into this buggy, I will become part of the aggregate. And that means that now my buggy and myself will transition authority together. And this is how we make sure that my player, while he's driving this buggy, is always authoritative on the same server. So you can see, as I drive around with this buggy between the zones, I will
killt jetzt einen Server und fährt in den nächsten.
All right. But there's more to this. So remember when I turned on the streaming earlier? The same streaming mechanics work here as well. Like, obviously, in this example right now, you can see all those servers, they have all those entities replicated. And it's a little bit wasteful because you have 3 servers, all need to replicate all those entities. And that's where streaming come into play. I can turn on streaming here, and you will see that
die so weit sind, habe ich nicht erwartet. Ich wusste, dass sie weit sind mit Sachen, aber dass sie so weit sind nicht.
And the red server no longer has the purple area streamed in. So let's see what's happened when I drive my buggy backwards into that into the red zone. What happens on that purple server?
Er ist weg.
And I just disappear.
Oh.
So right now, on this server, there's only Benoit replicated. And Benoit, if you come to me over in the red area, you will see that now on this server, there's no client at all. And in theory, we could now completely stream out the entire area on that server, or stream in a new area. And you will also see, as I drive back into the green area, I will magically reappear on that purple server. And this obviously works on the other side as well. Let's get a couple more player join. I have a couple more QA in the back, so you can just see the whole thing running in live with a bit more things going on.
30K.
Let me get out of this buggy. And you will see on each server renderer which clients are currently replicated on those servers and which clients are actually authoritative on those servers.
Meine Hände schwitzen
gerade
ein
bisschen. The green
bisschen.
server, because it's the middle one, has most entities replicated. And then you can see this purple one at the moment only has one client replicated. Yeah. So yes, this is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It has been a long time to come to this point, and I just can't put in words how much tech and work we had to put into this. Big shout outs to the network team. Big shout-outs to the online services team. Big shout-outs to Chris to let us doing this.
Das ist nur der erste Teil von heute, der jetzt fertig ist.
A really long journey to get to this point. And I've got to say, the team has done an amazing job. They've been working diligently for the last 4, 5 years. We've had a couple of false starts. We finally have an incredible, I mean, the way the replication layer works and how we can spin up servers and down and keep the state constant, even if a server goes down, is, I think, a genius design. And the first time I saw this, about 3 weeks ago, working fully, I cried. It's like giving birth.
Yeah. We did it!
And we wouldn't have been able to do this and work on this kind of tech without all your support.
That's right.
100%.
Now, you guys
and your trust.
allowing us to take the time to do it right, to really build it. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So much for everyone, and thank you everyone at CIG that's really worked hard to deliver all this amazing stuff that will be either in your hands now or in your hands very soon. And this is just the beginning of CitizenCon. We got a lot more stuff to show you.
Yeah. That's what we need for this MMO, guys.
Alter,
That's what we need.
das ist
Great demo.
die CitizenCon könnte jetzt fertig sein und ich wäre zufrieden.